Once upon a time, way back in 1989, I took my first marker class. Yes, markers used to be a regular part of the college art curriculum. And believe it or not, we didn't blend a thing. We didn't blend because we painted. This is the art of coloring. I take a fine art approach to coloring with markers and pencils. It's the next step beyond coloring with blending combinations. You could call it advanced blending, but it's much more like painting with markers. So let's take a closer look at the coloring process for the Aqua Chevron Ornament, part of my vintage trimmings project for advanced Copic marker and colored pencil. So we're joining the coloring in progress, and this chevron ornament was actually one of the last ornaments that I colored with Copic in the entire basket. I'm using a standard blending combination this time. It's BG75, BG72, and BG70. Now normally I underpaint with like gray or maybe a pink could go underneath this color. I want to desaturate most of my colors. But in this case, the BG75 is already quite desaturated, and I find that putting another color like gray underneath it doesn't really help all that much. So I just skip the underpaint and I'm going through and I'm looking at the photo reference and picking out areas of darkness. Now this is not a normal blending type technique. I'm drawing lines and then you're going to see me scrub over the top of them. I've already switched to BG72 by the way. And here I'm just kind of going over the top of some of the areas of the BG75. And then like here, I'll be drawing more of the ridges in this ornament. There's lots of little ridges as we rise up the side of the ornament. So I want to make sure that I'm capturing the shadow that kind of collects on the dark side of each one of those ridges. And it's a sphere, so I need to come in with those flick strokes in from the outside to round off that shape because the form is very important. It's more important than the colors. So down here, I'm taking that BG72 over the top of the 75, but you see, I'm not hanging out there and like stroking it. It's going to blend because there's moisture there, but that's not like my primary goal. The color here is blotchy, and if you look at the ornament in the photo reference, it's kind of a rough and ready type ornament. It's not finely done. There's scratches on it, and the paint job is bad, and that's what I'm trying to duplicate with these kind of scribbly strokes. I'm getting the shade and the shadow in the right spots, but I don't really care if it blends. So here's that BG70, and this marker has a ton of colorless blender in it. And so I'm using this to really soak some solvent into these areas. Even though there's a lot of solvent to it, the BG72 and the 75 are stubborn blenders. They don't really want to budge. They're gorgeous colors, but they are stubborn. But that's okay, because remember, I'm not really going for that finished and polished look. I want this ornament to look rusted and scratched and vintage. So what I'm doing here is I've kind of got like one eye on the photo reference and one eye on my paper. And I'm really reading the photo reference and adding in color where I see it, just like I would do with a paintbrush. This is not your normal marker technique. I see a little bit more darkness as the chevrons approach the edge, so that's why I'm coming in and darkening them up. I will kind of go over this with a little bit of the solvent, but again, if they blend, fine. If they don't, not a problem. Going over it with the 72, just softening it slightly and expanding those areas. And now I really want to take advantage of this marker to kind of round off those edges. So you'll see me coming back in, there we go, kind of with a scrubbing stroke right there. And I'm just pushing those edges deeper. This is a casual approach to coloring. It's not the normal refined technique that I teach in my beginner blending courses. So let's move to the colored pencil portion. And the first thing that I'm going to do with this lamp black pencil, I want to orient this sphere in the basket there. And I think what intermediate and beginners level colors fail to do is you don't think about how objects sitting side by side affect each other. So the sphere is rounded, but so is that pine cone. And so they're going to kind of cast some shadowy shapes onto each other just because of their proximity. So I'm spending some time with this lamp black pencil, and then also you'll see me use right there it is, burgundy. And I'm just kind of using that burgundy to enrich the black, and I'm shaping the area around the sphere. And eventually I'm going to start cutting in on the sphere to shape it. But I just want to make sure that I'm addressing the fact that the sphere is darkening the pine cone, and the pine cone is darkening the sphere in turn. Just kind of making that nice and deep in there. I stop frequently to sharpen my pencils, and that's something that I've kind of edited out of these videos just for brevity. But when you do see my hand moving off camera, I'm either switching pencils, or if I come back with the same color, like right there, I have sharpened my pencil. It's a myth that you need a dull point to get a soft effect. I think it's harder with a dull pencil to work. I really, really want that sharp point for accuracy, and I color very lightly, so softness isn't a problem. Just like I spent some time dealing with the pine cone, now I'm kind of dealing with that area where the chevron ball meets up against the red ornament that's right next to it. And there's a lot of darkness right in there because we're on the dark side of one of those chevron ridges. And so I'm using that black lightly and building it up slowly as needed. In some areas, the black is rather thick, and then up towards the cap, it gets a little bit lighter. I'm reading those colors from the photo reference. There's no formula or rule that I'm working by. I'm actually looking at the photo reference and seeing what value I see there, and then duplicating that on my paper. Now's the time where I think, pretty sure, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm going to go around the edge of the ornament and just kind of melt that ornament into the darkness. So I'm looking at the edges, and then I want to make sure that there's like this seamless transition from the black in the bottom of the basket all the way up, and I want that darkness to creep up the sides, and that's going to give us a spherical look. As the shape turns away from our eye, it's naturally going to get darker, but it's also moving into shadow back there. Now, I think I've mentioned in other videos that the background for this basket isn't just black. You're seeing black right now, but I've actually got black, and then there's turquoise over the top of the black, and then there's also burgundy over the black. And what that does is it gives me a very rich black that changes temperature as the eye moves through the different parts of the basket. So like in that crevice right there, I'm probably going to put some peacock, but then as that black basket moves over towards the red ornament, that's where I would start to put more of the burgundy in the background there. So see how I've pushed that background darker, and I'm starting to melt out the edge of the ornament. Now I'm really going to come in more. There we go. So I'm using a circular technique, and then you'll see me kind of run back and forth, and I'm trying to mask some of that BG marker so that I've got a nice transition from perfect value black all the way up to very light BGs. Sharpened my pencil there, and I tend to think of the shadow as kind of a liquid monster, I guess. You think about weird things when you're coloring, but I think of shadows as being alive, and they kind of creep up the side of objects. And so my creeping shadow here is creeping through the valleys. So you'll see me darken the side of the ornament, but then you'll also see me take that black and move it up into those ridges, that the chevron ridges that they have there along the side there, the zigzag pattern. The shadow kind of creeps up higher in the valley than it does on the high spots. Yes, I think about weird things when I color. It's a lonely job. So here I go, there I go, bringing that shadow up further into the valley and leaving kind of high spots of lightness. I mean, it's comparative lightness on the far edge there. I would describe what I'm doing here. Overall, the whole process is just micro adjustments, little bits of colored pencil at a time, always going very, very softly. I'll even pull out an eraser and use that as a tool if I need to. I switched to the burgundy right here because there's that color interaction going on between the red ornament and the aqua ornament. So there's light that hits the red ornament and it bounces off the red ornament and casts some red onto the aqua. And if you don't share that color between two adjacent objects, then they don't look like they're really next to each other. One of the things that you notice when you start observing real lighting conditions, real objects in real life, is that you notice that things are constantly bouncing color from one object to another. You know, when you're neighbors, you're just going to influence each other. So you'll see me move back and forth between the black and that burgundy, darkening this where I feel like it needs just a little bit more. I do look frequently at that photo reference, and I'm looking like kind of with value vision, where you're looking at the photo reference and saying, are my values the same on my paper as I see in the photo reference? And that could require adding more pencil, or it could require using an eraser to lift something up. Just little tiny adjustments as I'm moving around here. Now, some people might wonder, well, you know, I'm heavy-handed, Amy. Couldn't I use a gray pencil instead? No, not really. The thing about a black pencil, and this is true, this is why I frequently do use a 90% gray pencil, but all of the other ones they've got a lot of white content to them. So the black and the 90% grays are translucent pencils. I'm not trying to hide the Copic. I want that aqua to show through. And if I use an opaque pencil, a gray, and all grays are opaque, it's going to block the aqua and you're not going to see that color. And so it's going to look like weird gray pencil sitting there on your ornament. So it really is the best long-term solution for you is to learn pressure control so that you can use these dark but transparent and translucent pencils with confidence that you're not going to press too hard and make it look too black, because there really isn't an option for using a gray pencil and taking the safe way out with gray instead of black. I'm using this black pencil to make gray in a lot of areas, but I'm using it not so much because it's black, but because it's adding shade and desaturation while still letting the aqua Copic shine through. At no point, like this is not a colored pencil project. At no point do I want to hide that Copic. I always want it to shine through. I worked hard on it. You'll also notice that I'm kind of avoiding a stripe right down the center of the ornament because there's a highlight there. And you don't always have to color the highlight. In this case, I've kind of colored the negative space around the highlight and created the highlight that way. You don't have to use a white pencil for it. Now here I've switched to a yellow ochre pencil, and what's going on is that in the photo reference, there is a metallic gold stripe on the peak of all of these ridges, but it's not a clean, well-defined and nicely painted stripe. It's kind of like they rubbed it on and then scratched it off. It's very sloppy. So you'll see me kind of using almost like a scumbling stroke to kind of scribble on the color. It's just kind of putting it on there, but putting it on there messy. So just scumbling and kind of scribbling my way up the ornament. You saw that I just pulled off and sharpened my pencil. So much easier to control a sharp point than a dull one. And for this, you really do need control because the ridges here are not that thick. so I don't want to accidentally misfire and put pencil where I don't want it to go. Now here I've got a problem because I'm bringing that gold up. Yeah, I used an eraser right there. What happened is I'm bringing the gold up, but it's interacting with the black pencil, and it was kind of moving some of that black pencil around. That's one of the reasons why I don't work with black a lot. This is that white all pencil. This pencil will color over the top of anything. Love it. It's my pencil of the year for 2023. Love this thing. When everything else is burnished and tapped out, this pencil will still stick to it. And I'm using this to kind of mess up some of that yellow ochre stripe. Just kind of adding a little bit of highlight next to it, but also mess up the precision of the gold stripe because it was looking a little bit too neat and tidy. Now I'm coming in with that color called Peacock Blue, and I'm kind of using it a little bit on the ornament, but also off the ornament into the background. I'm going over the black because I don't want it to read as too black. I've got the right value, but it feels like the wrong color. So I'm just using this pencil to blue things up a little bit. So turquoise, or that peacock blue, and then more of the burgundy again. The reason why I'm using burgundy instead of an outright red is because this kind of is in an area of shade and shadow. So the burgundy feels like more of a muddy, desaturated red, which is more appropriate for these areas. There's quite a lot of red that shows. Oh, hello, kitty. There's quite a lot of red that shows in the final version of this. And I really love those moments where you realize that you're looking at a blue object, but it's got red on it. Those are like little special moments that it makes me smile when I see other painters and artists doing that. And so it's something that I also include in my own work. I'm adding some red to the little brass cap there because yes, it would be reflecting red from that ornament. So we're much later, we took a time jump here, and I'm using a gold Signo pen, which is a favorite among card makers. And I teach a lot of card makers. They introduced me to this pen. It's probably one of the best gold pens that I've ever touched. Love this thing. And I'm using it, but like I'm not drawing fine, crisp lines like people usually use it for. First of all, remember, I put some gold ochre down, some yellow ochre, and I put some white down. So this pen is not sticking the way it normally would. And then I'm also using kind of like a little skipping stroke. And so the effect is very rustic, almost like somebody scrubbed it off. Because remember, this ornament is kind of messy in the photo reference. So I'm making the line a little bit thick in some places and solid in some places, and then you'll see me go dot, dot, dot to kind of taper it off. I want it to look real, so I'm not doing a ton of gold, and the gold is mostly right through the center there where that highlight zone is, and then it tapers off and gets thinner towards the edge. And then now here I am with an acrylic white paint pen, and I'm just using it to strengthen the hot highlights just on the one side of the chevron stripes. And there you go. We've colored an Aqua Chevron ornament using the painterly approach to coloring. I laid down stripes of colors and then I softened them with a high solvent BG70 marker, but nothing really blended, and the stripes are still visible even now. Then I overpainted with colored pencils to enhance the shapes and add realistic dimension to the chevron ridges. And I capped it off with a gold gel pen, something that's very familiar to card makers. Sometimes you just need a bit of gold. You can color like this too. This Aqua Chevron ornament is part of the Vintage Trimmings project. There's more info about how to color this project yourself down in the description. And hey, if you want to see how I colored more ornaments from this basket, check out this video here.